Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Pearlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Pearlman.
Hello. For the next half hour, we are going to be talking about Kenyan safaris in East Africa and supporting sustainability projects and ecotourism opportunities for local communities with my guest, Karen Cleveland. She is the safari host and director of Nunu's Kenyan Safaris and is also the founder of the nonprofit organization Safari for Good. She has worked as a project manager and an IT systems administrator and a pharmacy technician. She has many memberships, including Women Travel Leaders, Transformational Travel Council, Snohomish Chamber of Commerce, Snohomish Network of Women, and the American Society of Travel Advisors. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you today.
You split your time between the United States, the state of Washington, and the country of Kenya in East Africa, because you want people to enjoy and protect and support the wildlife as well as help the local communities, which is done by adventurers and tourists taking wildlife safaris. You just returned from the beautiful, wonderful safaris in the national parks in Kenya, and there's so many different species of animals, from the mammals, from the lions and elephants and the zebra and the giraffes, but there's birds and reptiles and beautiful plants and trees. Tell us what one can enjoy when one is out in the wild.
Absolutely. We saw so many different species. I actually counted them up, and I got to over 33 of the land animals, land and water, including hippo, and countless, hundreds of birds. I think some of the favorite viewings that we saw were the cheetahs that were chasing the jackals away from their fresh kill, their food. The lions with her 3 babies sitting on the side of the road, kind of startled when an elephant approached them. There's so much beautiful wildlife, and it's just amazing. No matter how many times you might see an elephant or a lion or a rhino in the wild, it never gets old. It's always an awe-inspiring moment.
Depending on what park you are in, you see different kinds of animals at different stages of their life. The wildebeest, they migrate across borders from Tanzania and Kenya, but you have to be there at a particular time of the year.
Absolutely. The great wildebeest migration really is in full-fledged in Kenya in August, probably July and September as well. They are on Mother Nature's schedule and not our schedule. But yes, the different parks have different beauty in it and different animals to see. So we like to cover several parks when we go.
We think of the large animals, the land animals and plants, but there's a coastline, and you can actually see some marine life as well.
Absolutely, and it's beautiful coastline. There's snorkeling, scuba diving. Certain times of year, there's the dolphins and the whales migrating through. It's a beautiful coastline. It rivals any other tropical coastline that I've been to.
Safari companies such as yours make sure that the guides respect the animals, and even though the tourists might want to get close, they don't want to get too close. If they get too close, the animals aren't able to engage in their normal behavior, such as hunting. That's very important, and we don't want to disturb the animals. So are there any kinds of rules that not only the guides need to follow, but the people, such as stay in the vehicle and not get out?
Absolutely. Keep your arms in the vehicle if the animals come up close to the vehicle. We don't want to disturb them at all. And I do ensure that my guides stay on the roads, do not go off-roading unless they're in a place that is not, a park or a conservancy, unless it's a different situation. I am a firm believer in ethical treatment and to not harass animals in any way or change their behavior.
Which parks do you prefer taking your visitors to, and how many parks are there in Kenya?
There's a large number of parks, including conservancies and some refuges and the national parks. I stick to about 7 or 8 with my groups, so Masai Mara is a big hit because the large number of animals. Also, Olpejeta Conservancies because the rhinoceros, and they have the only 2 remaining northern white rhinos in the world at that particular conservancy. I love Amboseli. It's a whole different ecosystem with Mount Kilimanjaro in the background. Savo West has great terrain as well. The red, they call them the red elephants because of the soil color. And so depending on what my particular group wants at that time, we might go to 4 or 5 of these different parks and experience the different aspects of Kenya.
You mentioned Masai Mara, but that's a large plain that doesn't recognize the political boundary, and when it's in Tanzania, it's called the Serengeti.
Absolutely, yes. So the animals, they don't need their passport to go back and forth. They travel freely back and forth.
But humans do need that passport, but it's pretty easy to travel across the boundaries?
There's some checkpoints as long as you have your proper documentation, yes.
When the British controlled this area and left the colonies and these areas became their own country, there was a big debate. Where do you draw the boundary? Because the highest peak in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro, over 19,300 some feet, is in Tanzania, but you can see it best when you're in Kenya, if you're not climbing it, of course.
Right. And so those iconic photos with an elephant and Kilimanjaro in the background are most certainly from Kenya. But also it does mean it's all part of an ecosystem, the Kilimanjaro ecosystem, where the elephants do go back and forth between Tanzania and Kenya at that place. Even
though your safaris have set programs to set places, you help the visitor if they want to do additional kinds of experiences, because I know when I go to Kenya, I like to go to an orphanage in Kogelo that I have helped and supported with donations. The last time I went, I wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, as well as going to the parks where the accommodations and the food are just fantastic. But even in the big city of Nairobi, you can go to an elephant orphanage run by a nonprofit organization. So there are lots of kinds of things to do. And of course, there are also cultural experiences with the different tribes where you can see them dance and join in their festivities. Absolutely. It's so diverse, and each guest has their own interest. I am actually looking at the archaeology sites right now for a trip coming up. That's the history of humankind, essentially. There's also many cultural festivals and music and dance displays that can be seen depending on where you are. There's opportunities if you want to volunteer with the animals, and like you said, orphanage and other more personal or community-based opportunities. A lot of opportunity. It's not just for safari. As an anthropologist, I was absolutely thrilled to visit Olduvai Gorge, where Mary and Louis Leakey found human remains, footprints of ancient humans, where it's believed humans evolved from Africa and then went on into Europe and the Americas. But there are so many other places. I know of the work of one of the top primatologists in the world, Jane Goodall, who's a United Nations Peace Ambassador, and her long-term study at Gombe of the chimpanzees and the discoveries that she made. These places are working research centers, but tourists are also welcome, aren't they? Yeah, and I love to encourage that kind of visit, getting to know what's behind it. I think it helps for people to understand why they're doing this work and the necessity to help preserve the work and the land and the animals, all of it. When you go, I'm sure it's a different experience each time, because you never know what animal, what plant you're going to see. You have different kinds of experiences. What were some of the most unusual encounters that you incurred? That's a great question. Because my nonprofit is still getting started, and we have focused previously a lot on the animals and what a person might think of as a typical safari. I think it's really interesting when you see
see animals that are outside of how you expect them to be. So a lot of people don't know that the elephants will chase off lions, for example. And watching lions perfectly comfortable in their setting and the arrival of elephants will scare them off, and they have to go somewhere else. We saw buffalo chasing lions off on this last safari. And the other thing is, a lot of people are really surprised at what the landscape of Kenya looks like. Media feeds us a lot of images, and what we see in reality is not always the same as what we have seen on TV or on the news.
It's definitely different when you go directly and see these different places rather than just watch them on the films and in the documentaries. And you mentioned your nonprofit organization, Safari for Good. I love your 3 core goals. You want to empower young adult Kenyans to have an interest in conservation, sustainability, and tourism, to build their networks, their skills. You want to support local communities and sustainable development and work along with the local people so that the ecotourism sector helps the local communities. And of course, you also provide international safari guests with a deeper connection to Kenya by giving your safari guests a more meaningful, authentic experience that understands and respects the Kenyan culture, conservation, and community resilience. And I think a lot of people forget that there are many different tribes in Kenya, and they have different customs, different languages, different practices. It depends on where you go, who you meet, and what you're going to see, and how you're going to share with them their land.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And mentioning the different tribes, every Kenyan probably knows at least 3 languages, their mother tongue or their tribal language, Swahili and English, in addition to many other European languages or other tribal languages that they might know. So it is very interesting to get to know the people individually. And one thing I'm really excited about the Safari for Good is I was kind of just brainstorming over a couple of week period. It's like, I have this safari business. How can I do good with it? What can be done? How can I help the animals? How can I help the local people who could use some additional resources? How can I help my guests have a deeper experience? And so I really feel it brings it all together, an attempt to meet all 3 and to keep the land viable and the animals in their home place without interruption.
It is so important to connect with the people as well as the animals. It was unbelievable to me that Kenya was willing to burn their ivory stock to try and stop the illegal poaching of tusks. Has that been successful?
I would say that it has helped. I think it's an ongoing issue. I know there's been a reduction in a lot of the poaching, but it does still happen. So there's still more work to do. And that was a significant event that they did that. I know people that attended, and I guess it was very emotional and just a very significant, meaningful time. But there's still work to do, I'm afraid. There's still people that are out there that aren't honoring the animals or their body parts, and so we still have to stay vigilant.
On safari in the parks, there are 4- or 5-star hotels. There are also tent camps, which are really deluxe hotels. The walls are just tents as opposed to wood or concrete. The food is always delicious. The service is always fantastic. And the safety is most important. I recall so many times in so many parks that they would have people posted all night long so that if you walked from your room to the lounge, you wouldn't get attacked by a wild animal because they roam right through where you're staying. It's definitely safe to go on safari, isn't it?
It is, yes. Like you said, there's always security guards around if you're in the parks, staying in the parks, and there's flashlights, there's whistles. Depending on where you're staying, they have everything they could think of. They don't want anything to happen to their guests either. So I have heard lions roaring outside the tent, and it can be a little alarming, but also having full trust in their system that they have laid out for how to keep all the guests safe is very reassuring.
One park I stayed in was above a water hole. We could tell the people running the lodge to wake us up anytime during the night if a certain animal came to the water hole. That's quite a service.
That is quite a service, because you don't want to miss it if the leopard comes by and you're sleeping.
And of course, most animals eventually do come to the water holes. We're going to talk more about Kenyan's cultural and natural history history with my guest, Karen Cleveland, who is safari host and director of Nunu's Kenyan Safaris. We'll be back in a moment.
Environmental Directions with Nancy Pearlman continues with further discussion of the world's critical ecological issues. For more information, you may call 310-559-9160 or go to www.ecoprojects.org. Now, here's Nancy.
I'm speaking with Karen Cleveland. She is founder of Safari for Good and is the safari host and director of Nunu's Kenyan Safaris. Tell us what Nunu means and why that name.
Nunu was actually the name of my husband's mother. My husband is from Kenya. I met him while I was in Kenya on safari one time, and his mother went by the name Nunu. And after she passed, and when we started the company, we had several ideas for names, and this is the one that rose to the top, what to honor her and honor her legacy of love and being connected with the family and being connected with all of the community.
Great connection. Africa is a gigantic continent. People don't realize by looking at a map how big it is. You could fit easily 3 United States into the area. Northern Africa is a totally different culture than sub-Saharan Africa. I've been to many different parts, east, west, south. There's beautiful wildlife in the southern part, in the eastern part, even in the more developed western part. And there are lots of safari companies. So when a traveler is trying to decide where to go, why should they choose Kenya or your company versus so many other operators out there? I do know that I recommend to anybody that they be sure that whatever company they use is promoting sustainable operations, is staying in facilities that are ecological and sustainable, and that they give back to the local community so that people who live there are not taken advantage of, but they are actually respected. So how does one decide?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming, and I appreciate your saying to be with ethical companies. Because I come from the United States, I was raised in the United States, and I understand how a lot of Westerners like to travel. Certain food needs, health needs, comfort desires. We can easily blend that with my husband's deep Kenyan roots and understanding the land, understanding the animals. So he comes from a background of several people that do the safari business. Several family members are in the safari business. So he understands like where some of the hidden gems are, where some of the things that not everyone is going to get to see, or some of the background information of the towns and the villages and the customs. So you get a combination of the Western comfort with the local hidden gems of Kenya.
You certainly want to go with somebody who knows the local area. In the parks, you have experienced guides who can track the animals, and I am always amazed when they say, look over there. You say, what's that? What are you talking about? They can see the animal. They point it out to us, then we can enjoy it. But I know that one of my videographers one time was a bird watcher. We get off the plane, and before you know it, we hadn't even gotten our bags. He checked off 3 new birds off of his bird list. There are also plants. I'm looking here at a souvenir that I have of a plant where the roots look like they're above the tree. Seeing this tree in the wild is really remarkable. Can you explain it to us and some of the other flora that one might encounter?
And that tree is ancient. There are so many varieties of flowers, and it's fun to see things that people in Europe or United States might have as houseplants, and they're small, but in Kenya they're big. And of course there's a lot of fruit, there's a lot of nut trees, as well as the coffee and the tea. You can go see how they farm the coffee and the tea if you want to. The vegetation, the different kinds of plants is pretty amazing as well.
What about this tree, baobab?
I pronounce it baobab. It's composed primarily of water, and it can be thousands of years old. They're huge. They look a little bit haunted sometimes because they don't always have leaves on them.
There are birds that are there year-round, but there are also migratory birds.
Right. There's a lot of flamingos that come and go. They are migratory.
And there's one national park and a lake where it's just practically all pink with flamingos.
Yes, it's amazing to see that. That was one of my highlights on my first safari for sure.
You are also involved actively with the protection of the natural world here in the United States, in the state of Washington, in the city of Snohomish. That sounds like an indigenous name. You're active with a network of women. You're also active with women travel leaders. Is there a difference when you have women engaged in this activity versus the men?
I'm going to make a little bit of a generalized statement, but it seems that when women are involved, the community does better. They contribute more time, more resources, and maybe more love toward their passion, their purpose.
That also is part of your nonprofit's goal, Safari for Good, that it helps both the boys and the girls, the women and the men, that everybody has an equal role in trying to create a healthy, productive ecotourism sector that helps the local community. What are some of the plans that you have ahead in terms of teaching them about conservation, about having their operations sustainable? Are the communities getting the benefit of some of these new technologies as well? How do you see helping them create a better kind of travel experience for the visitor?
Yeah, it's big. I have a lot of ideas, so I'm trying to go very slow so I don't overwhelm me or anyone else. Initially, I will launch this fall a safari with some of the community ambassadors on it. So for their community, what I would like to see is that they understand the need for the more sustainable practices. And this might have to do with wildlife farming conflict. There's cows or goats and the wildlife. There's a lot of conflict there. I can help the experts talk with the community members, and the experts might be people that have been to school that come on safari with me, or they might be people that they meet, that the community members meet while we're on safari, but to help them understand how to help mitigate those conflicts and what can be done so that the wildlife doesn't have to be killed when there is an incident in a farming village or in a herd, for example. The other thing I want to see about starting with is our visits to the communities of these people that are with us. I would like the guests, the safari guests that are doing those visits, to begin to understand more what these people go through. And we don't want to fix anything. We don't want to try to impose our practices. But is there a way that we can assist them in their own existing system to help them live better or do better or find a different way of doing something so that everyone comes out ahead?
It's so important that the Western visitor acknowledge what the local communities go through. We go to the national parks. We enjoy seeing the wildlife, but we forget that the animals are not fenced in. They don't stay in the park, and that the local community has to worry about the animals trampling their farms. They have to worry about the animals causing some harm to them. They have to watch out for them. We don't want them to kill the animals, but they have to benefit from our going and seeing the animals and letting the animals be, and we want to support these communities so that the people don't go out and poach the animals and sell the tusks and other animal products illegally, which causes a decline in the population. And these are some issues I think sometimes the tourist doesn't want to hear, but really ought to hear, because it's really an interconnected system between the humans and the wildlife.
Very interconnected. I completely agree. Also showing the community leaders that the animals are actually worth more alive than dead.
Something else that tourists should be aware of is that they can contribute to the local community, the poor people who need resources, and that is taking donated items that might be valuable, whether or not it's school supplies for the local school or medical supplies for the local clinic, or whether or not it's clothing and other items that might benefit the people. I recall that when I went to Burkina Faso in West Africa, that I took an extra suitcase of donated items. I gave it to the lady who was taking care of us at the dormitory kind of area that we were staying in, and she came back and said, "Here's your suitcase." I said, no, you keep the suitcase. It was something I picked up for $5 in a thrift store. but to her, it was worth $100.
Yeah.
People use these suitcases as closets, and they're valuable. I paid for the extra suitcase to go on the plane because you give it to these people, and it's worth hundreds of dollars to them. When a tourist tells me, oh, I travel lightly, I only take a carry-on or just one suitcase, I say, no, you're wrong. You should be taking an extra suitcase or two and giving all the items away that people need. Do you encourage that? Because I found that it was very hard to try and get travel companies to ask their customers to do that.
Oh, yeah, I do encourage it. And actually, I have several connections of organizations that want stuff brought from the United States.
Your company has been taking people on safaris. What kinds of unique experiences do they comment on when they return? What is it when they encounter the friendly people, when they see the beautiful wildlife, when they look at the gorgeous landscape?
I have found it's a combination of when they come like almost face-to-face with an animal, it's like a soul-dropping experience for them, for many people. And then also finding a connection when we stop like in a village or at a store on the side of the road, having that same kind of experience with a local and forming an unexpected connection with the people that they didn't know anything about before.
There are hundreds of plants and animals that one can enjoy on a safari. You can't list them all. I can't list them all. But tell us a little bit more about watching them. I loved it when I went on safari and the guides would just park the vehicle and we could just watch them carry on. The chimpanzees carrying their babies and seeing a lion up in the tree resting or seeing the elephants move. I thought the giraffes, because they're so tall, they're eating the plants so high up, was something that you don't experience in a zoo where you see the fence. It's so different.
That is true. So just going out to a big plain or field and parking is one of my favorite things because there's so many different antelopes, there's the zebras, there's the giraffes. Like you said, the giraffes are very tall, and to watch them walk or to watch them run, they move so gracefully, but they cover such a big amount of land in a small time when they need to. The elephants, when you can see them at a distance and you see a whole herd moving, making their trek wherever they're going, and they're synchronous almost, and they almost look like big tanks or something. It's not something you can see in the zoo either because they have this vast land behind them, in front of them, all around them, that they are free to go where they want. And I think that's one of the big things is these animals are free to go and do what they want. Some of them are choosing to remain together with other species. Some of them are choosing to be alone, but they get to decide where they're going.
In addition to the large animals, we have the reptiles and the invertebrates, the insects, and seeing the termite mounds. They're gigantic. They're tall.
One of my most popular social media posts from the last safari was the dung beetle rolling his dung ball up a hill. Yeah, so many different kinds of insects and the snakes and some beautiful iguanas.
And of course, the vegetation is different in terms of the plants and the trees and the flowers, and that's quite diverse.
The acacia tree that the giraffes like to eat have these thorns on them that are about 2, 3, 4 inches long. If you're able to see their tongue wrap around it and pull the leaf off, it's really amazing how they eat these very prickly trees without getting injured. Yes, the plants are really something else.
You have made me want to go back as soon as possible, and if others want to join your safaris and find out more, I assume they can go to your website. What is it?
Yes, they can come to nunuskenyansafaris.com, nunuskenyansafaris.com.
Do you ever customize individual safaris for people?
Yes, absolutely.
I know that I always like to do the traditional folk dance, and even in the big city in Nairobi at the university, they had musicians and dancers, and there's also a cultural center that brings in people from other tribes to show off their costumes and dances and music.
Yes.
So many different kinds of opportunities. I am so pleased that you are encouraging people to go and enjoy a wonderful experience of seeing wildlife and ecosystems and communities and people and doing your work to help the local communities. Thank you so very much for being my guest.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you today, Nancy.
I have been speaking with Karen Cleveland, who is Safari host and director of Nunu's Kenyan Safaris and founder of Safari for Good. I'm Nancy Pearlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Pearlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.